afternoon. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that we hope will help improve your life. It's Reid here with my partner, Dave Burstein. Hey, Dave.
Hello. I remember Friday, you thought it was a really big story with
We,
the airlines having problems, the hospitals having problems.
it
The thing that
seemed
was
it
so
was
amazing. Yeah,
a worldwide meltdown, Dave. I mean, it was global. I don't recall seeing a shutdown interruption on that scale before. Maybe you've seen something, but to me, it was unprecedented. It hit banks, it hit travel agencies, it hit hospitals, it hit the transportation system, it hit the airlines, and still having ripple effects. What, 5 days later, Delta Airlines is
that was
still
where I
canceling.
was going.
Yeah, still
Delta is
canceling
still
flights.
canceling flights
Yeah,
today because
yeah.
it's so hard to recover. Do you
You know,
understand what happened?
well, I'm gonna ask you to explain it. When I first heard, I said, "Wait a minute, how can all these disparate organizations be affected simultaneously, by some quirk in the internet?" And what I didn't realize until I saw, kind of the first reports about what was going on, and apparently it was an update. I guess here was my disconnect, Dave. People were saying their computers didn't work. It wasn't so much that the internet didn't work, but people's computers didn't work, and that's where I got a little bit tripped up. But break it down for us. What happened?
Okay, half the businesses in the world, it seems, are using Microsoft software to run their systems.
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft software, besides being notoriously bad, is like any other software. Sometimes it gets hacked. So a company called CrowdStrike has been collecting billions of dollars for fancy anti-malware software that works right in the heart with permission of Microsoft corporate software and can go into Microsoft software that everybody is using and start making changes in order to protect hospitals, banks, airlines, and so on. CrowdStrike did an update really, really badly. And they sent that update to Microsoft systems around the world. And suddenly, everybody was going down. It turned out to be a very small programming error. It was a pointer in somebody's C language, according to at least one report. But it was disastrous
Mm-hmm.
because the CrowdStrike software went right into the heart of the Microsoft system, and because of the error, shut it down. Now, it shut it down on each of the computers on a network. When you're thinking of Delta Airlines, you're talking about tens of thousands around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And to get it back, apparently you needed somebody to go into each of those computers and
What?
manually fix it.
Oh, come on, Dave.
I haven't seen all the details on that,
Wow.
but
So I mean,
I can
is that an
understand.
estimate on how many computers, how many devices worldwide was affected? Has anybody estimated a number on that?
I haven't seen a number, certainly in the hundreds of thousands and maybe more.
Mm-hmm.
And this is unicropping. This is something we're afraid about and worrying why we're not going to have any bananas. Almost all the bananas in the world are one variety called the Cavendish, after Lord Cavendish, who had something to do with the United Fruit Company or whatever 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if there's a virus, ordinary plant virus, taking out Cavendish bananas? Well, the banana crop would totally fail. And 2 years ago, it seemed to be happening. Fortunately, it didn't spread as badly as people feared, but that's unicropism. Most things, most wheat, most bananas, uh, most oranges have numerous varieties out there, some of which might be affected by a given virus, and some of which may go the way of the American chestnut tree or the French wine grapes, both of which almost disappeared many years ago to a plant disease. And since they were so similar, they were all vulnerable.
But Microsoft's ubiquity is pretty stunning, Dave. Maybe they don't have the home market like the banana guy that you're talking about, but they've got an incredible share of the world's market for PCs. I know I read that some of the other operating systems, non-Microsoft operating systems, Linux, and maybe there's one or two others that you could probably call out their names. Those systems were not affected. It was just Microsoft computers running Microsoft software, but it's got to be more than 50% of the world's computers, I would think.
Yeah, so a lot's going wrong, and we can take it to more examples. For example, most of the AT&T network, that's 250 million phones, a lot of 911 services and so on, went down for almost a day about a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
And what that's telling me, and I'm seeing this right and left, is that two big problems. One is that people are so anxious to get software out there. It's happening all over AI in places like Google, being really sloppy. They don't check it well enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's put out because they're in a hurry to compete Google Gemini against, three or four other similar systems that are probably just as good, including the new one that just came up from Facebook this week.
Oh, okay.
The 405B.
Okay.
But that's another story. And the second thing is that companies in the world over the last 40 years have gotten too big, too darn big. So that Microsoft controls, I don't know how many computers around the world. The airline, including at most, but not all of the big airlines.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the impact. We saw the impact. Not just the airlines, but the hospitals. You had a couple of stories about some of the hospitals, Dave, that couldn't access their electronic records and whatnot, and to help them do their procedures. And this is life and death type of activities that are networked in, and when the network goes down or the computers go down, life and limb can be at risk on a really global level.
Absolutely. Now, what to do about it? I don't know how to get software vendors or hardware manufacturers around the world all being more careful. I know that, for example, in the case of AT&T, every other year for the last 15 years or so, I've been seeing more people laid off. And traditionally, they're laid off in what the companies call non-revenue areas. In other words, where they're not selling anything directly, like they're putting the company computer systems around. And you can fire 1,000 people like that at AT&T and for 10 years be fine until the whole network went down because they didn't catch a problem. And I'm sure
a big data breach, a big privacy breach right around the same time, AT&T. Were those events related?
Yeah. They apparently weren't, but we're seeing more breaches everywhere. One of the latest ones was Disney. And sometime soon, we're going to see the results of millions plus Disney Slack messages, which they use instead of email because they thought it was easier and maybe more secure, that got hacked and are being distributed over the internet. Absolutely, there's nothing that is not hackable. OpenAI just got seriously hacked.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Uh, and Hollywood knows this because a few years ago, they had to fire a pile of executives. I forget whether it was Paramount or Fox. They put a movie out that was critical of the North Koreans. And the North Koreans are very strong technologically, had good hackers.
Mm-hmm.
They broke into the mail system of the movie company, and suddenly they found racist comments from the CEO and a whole lot of other really colorful things,
Wow.
like a top executive walking down the hallways, screaming at her friend, "You can't use Dr. So and so. I don't want to go to bed with him."
Mm. Wow.
And that story was repeated in the company, and the Koreans found it and they put it out there. And
Mm-hmm.
they fired a number of top people.
Mm-hmm.
So these are serious problems, and I wish I had solutions. One of the solutions that I think is important for a lot of reasons is not to let companies get so big. And we just saw that Google was ready to spend $23 billion to buy a security and then something company in Israel. The deal was apparently set, and the Wall Street Journal and so on reporting on it is pretty solid. It got rejected yesterday. The people in the company turned down a $23 billion offer because the American government is doing its job. Lena Khan and the people in the Justice.
Wait. Break that down there. What are you talking about? Who rejected the deal?
The
The
company that
seller?
was being bought said, "We can't sell because the Americans may come in and kill the whole deal a year from now, and that's going to destroy us."
On
That
antitrust
happened
issues.
on antitrust. That just happened a couple of months ago
Mm-hmm.
when Adobe was ready to spend $20 billion to get rid of a competitor, Figma.
Mm-hmm.
Getting rid of competitors has a lot of consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Letting companies get as big, we're talking $3 trillion companies in some cases, has many consequences. One of them is that when something goes wrong in a company that big, it goes wrong around the world instantly sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And we just saw proof positive of that.
Yeah, yeah. That was Dave. Just the scope of the impact to me was stunning, and that it could be such a very small thing could have such a global impact. To me, that just says so much about our vulnerability, relying one on the systems, and then two, as you said, as you're talking about, on just a handful of companies that are running and controlling these systems. If there were a dozen companies made, that they had significant market share in the computer space, a glitch on one of them would not have had the global impact that it did this past Friday. But because of the consolidation that you're talking about, um, one oops can really have a tremendous impact across the planet.
So you have to be more careful, not less careful. But at the same time, companies, including Google and Facebook and Microsoft, have stock values that are so high that they have to cut expenses all the time. Otherwise, Wall Street will knock down the stock prices. And we'll go there. We'll go into some of that story maybe soon. But I see it in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
When a big issue comes up, any big issue that goes near tech, suddenly there is so much high-powered lobbying, the $1 million plus silver tones that they hire for it, the academics who they pay to get the word out that they want to get out, and so on. that almost everything, including AI safety now, the public discourse is way off base because billions of dollars are being spent on lobbying in the US and the European Union.
Mhm.
The Europeans are a little bit better at resisting it. They've been taking Google and Facebook and giving them billion-dollar fines, which they usually ignore because they're so big. How big are they? If I took the big six tech companies, how much do you think they're worth on the stock market today? I took a look. Six companies,
$5-10 trillion.
$15 trillion.
Wow.
And when you have that kind of money at risk and that kind of power and that size of a budget to do things in policy and so on, you have an enormous impact on what's right or wrong.
Mhm.
It really, it's an oligarchy on most issues,
Yeah, yeah.
even though we have the forms of democracy
Mhm.
and the power. And I've been covering people like AT&T in Washington for 25 years now. The power of that money so often wins over basic common sense and what is right and wrong.
Mhm.
That my instinct is that Lena Khan and Justice were going to be trying to break up some of the giant companies like they did once upon a time to Standard Oil are absolutely on target. And we're seeing it in something like this, where the company is so big that when they have a problem, horrors.
Now, Dave, I just a little bit of an aside, but let's just give a couple tips to regular folks so that they maybe will not be quite so vulnerable when we have these kinds of tech catastrophes. I'm thinking one, we say this all the time, but people don't do it, and that is back stuff up and have backups that are not connected to the internet. I mean, the portable hard drives now are so inexpensive. They're available, and you can back up your entire computer on one of these things, and then keep it off the grid so that if there's a meltdown on the grid, you still got your data there. I think that's just a real simple thing that most of us can do.
Well, you and I learned that decades ago, literally before many people were on the internet. And we learned you make three generations of backup because
Hmm.
sometimes you don't see there's a problem and you copy it onto your backup. And you always take one off premises in case there's a fire or
Right.
something.
Hmm.
And I did once upon a time have a customer who went totally down because they had a fire in their office.
Hmm.
Fortunately, the hard drive survived on that one.
Yeah.
But
And,
that you
and
can't hand on that.
speaking of fires and hard drives, one of the other things that the tech industry has gotten people to do now is so much of our stuff is stored in the cloud as opposed to on a device in your home. And when there's a disruption in the cloud, you're screwed. I was just looking at a story, and I think you know it too, Dave, about a writer who was working on a book, successful author working on a book, had done a bunch of drafts, working on Google Docs, and all of a sudden Google Docs shut her down and wouldn't let her get into her database. And all of her material, all of her drafts, been working on for years, she had no access to. And as you know, you try and call or put in trouble tickets to these giant companies, and that's just an endless loop of going nowhere. And this particular story, they talk about, well, sometimes an author that has that kind of problem gets picked up by a major media outlet, and they raise the profile of that story up, and somebody inside the giant company that can do something responds. That happened with this particular author, and even that didn't help. So here you have a well-known author, all kinds of drafts, and boom, she can't get access to them. She didn't back up the stuff at home. She didn't save the stuff on her hard drive or portable drive, everything in the cloud. And when the cloud says, okay, no more access for whatever reason, and they didn't even tell her the reason. They said she somehow violated the terms of service without even specifying what the violation was.
And let me give you a related story that just came up. A guy had his entire account shut down because they thought he was doing child porn. His kid, his infant, had a rash. And the doctor said, take a picture and send it to me. So, yes, he had a naked picture of a baby, as his doctor asked. And the automatic filters, which aren't perfect, knocked his whole account out and may have reported him to the police and have them knock his door down. I don't know all the details on this one. And one of the reasons we don't worry so much is that Google has actually gotten so big that it almost never does this kind of thing. But sometimes it does. Now, Google and most of the other services I know make it very easy for you to download a complete backup. And your broadband today is fast enough that that's not very hard at all. And obviously you want to do that on Microsoft because Microsoft has had so many problems over the years. And I would add to that Twitter, because Twitter has had so many technical problems lately. I don't trust it at all. I only use it because it doesn't have any competition where most of the people I'm trying to reach go. Twitter has a monopoly. Elon Musk came in, has had disaster after disaster, fired half the staff, including all the safety people, fired most of the people who were trying to make sure their software worked and was reliable. And I can tell you, I'm having problems, but I better not tell you too much more because we're running out of time before the break.
Okay. So this is Dave Burstein and Stu Reid on Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after a brief musical break.
The nail technician pushes my cuticles back, turns my hand over, stretches the skin on my palm and says, I see your daughters. And their daughters. That night in a dream, the first girl emerges from a slit in my stomach. The scar heals into a smile. The man I love pulls the stitches out with his fingernails. We leave black sutures curling on the side of the bath. I wake as the second girl crawls headfirst up my throat. A flower blossoming out of the hole in my face.
Trying to rain on the thunder. Tell the storm I'm new. I'm a walk, I'm a march on the regular. Painting white flags blue. Lord, forgive me, I've been running blind in truth. I'm a rain on this bitter love. Tell the sweet I'm new. Ooh, I'm telling these tears go and fall away, oh, may the last one burn into flames. Freedom, freedom, I can't move. Freedom, cut me loose, yeah. one burn into flames. Freedom, freedom, I can't move. Freedom, cut me loose. Yeah. Freedom, freedom, where are you? 'Cause I need freedom too. I break chains all by myself. Won't let my freedom rot in hell. Hey, I'ma keep on running 'cause the winner don't quit on themselves.
What you want from me? Is it true? You see, I'll father get in there. What you want from me? Is it true? You see, I'll father get in there. In there.
Okay, we're back. Community Technology, Dave Burstein and Stu Reid. Dave, we got to talk about the big news of this week, and that is the pulling out of the race of Joe Biden and the ascendancy of Kamala Harris, causing all kind of excitement in the Democratic Party and across the country with so many folks. What's your take on that, Dave?
You can make a
let me rephrase that question. I know we don't talk politics on the show per se, supporting one candidate or another, but one of the things that we've been talking about is polling and numbers that the media throws out there about what's going to happen, what's not going to happen, and the so-called science behind that whole activity. What's your take on that?
Well, I think you can guess the opinion of my opinion and Stu's opinion about Donald Trump, but that's not what the show is about. What we are something of expert on is we know something about basic math and science.
Mm-hmm.
And on that, it's nonsense, what I've been reading in the press. In particular, the news has worked at one of the articles had 11 different polls in the last 2 weeks. And some of them put Trump appointed to ahead, some of them put Harris appointed to ahead. The answer, what does that mean? Well, some of them wrote articles saying, well, she's 2 points down on Trump, she's got no chance. And others wrote, oh, she's ahead of Trump. Both statements are utter and total nonsense. Even if the polls are large and fairly well done, you can never measure anything like what the vote is going to be, especially months from now, absolutely accurately. And they give some nonsense about the error because of the size of the sampling is only 2 or 3%, but there are loads of other errors in measurement. So the science is very clear. If you're a point or two plus or minus, doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, no difference.
If you're a point or two plus or minus on 10 polls, well, even if all those polls were going one way, it wouldn't mean very much, but it turns out they're divided. The only thing you can pull out from the polling about what's going to happen in this election is it's highly likely to be very close unless something really dramatic happens between now and the actual election. A friend of mine, who happens to be a person of color, was very disappointed that Kamala Harris was getting it because he didn't think a person of color could get elected this year in the United States. So I was very happy to see the polls that said it's very close now.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the comedians said, he's got all these jokes about how old Biden is. Well, he doesn't have to throw them out. He can use them on Trump. He's almost the same age.
Well, it certainly is scrambled everything, and it's a whole new calculus on what's going to happen. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
It's not. It's going to be horrifying to watch.
Yeah, it is going to be horrifying.
That half the people in the United States might make a terrible mistake.
They might.
That is antithetical to everything I grew up thinking what this country was about.
Well,
That's
at least, with Kamala coming in, I think she energized the base, and because she's a woman, because she's a woman of color, I think it really is going to just dramatize the difference between the candidates, as opposed to, two old white guys arguing about, what one has done and what the other one wants to do. So, we'll see what happens.
Period.
Okay, Dave, let's bring it back to tech. Let's bring it back to some tech stuff. I read a headline that kind of struck me only because it's something that could affect so many people, and that's about out in LA. You got burglars that are using Wi-Fi jammers that are going in and disabling home security systems, home cameras, home smart doorbells, and just helping themselves. And I think these Wi-Fi jammers have been around for a while. But what's going on? What is there a resurgence or what's up?
Well, if I wanted to put a sensor on my window and not want to spend a lot of money rewiring my whole house, I might use Wi-Fi to get it back to the main box. So what's been happening, and this is an official warning for the LA Police Department, is that some crooks figured that out. They bought Wi-Fi jammers, which is supposedly illegal, but have always been easy to come by. Before they went into the house, they put the jammers to work and knocked out the home security systems. There's all these smart doorbells that people have now, which sound like a good idea. My landlord put one in for me, and I can see a picture on my cell phone of who's ever ringing the bell downstairs. I think that's coming through the building wiring, but it could very easily have been done through Wi-Fi in a small building.
Sure.
So that's something to worry about. Wi-Fi in LA is not protecting against a smart burglar. And I wasn't sure whether I wanted to say this on the air because I don't want to give anybody any ideas, but it's something to know. Now, all these things like Wi-Fi and all the technical stuff we're dealing with, it's not perfect. One of the things that you learn very early in this stuff is blow-ups happen. Things go wrong.
Yeah,
things don't work the way they're supposed to.
Had a big go wrong this past Friday, so I think it's clear that technology is not flawless.
It can be very good. It can be very useful.
It's great when it works.
And it usually works. And it's almost more dangerous when it works 99% of the time because you're so sure it's going to work, like these people using Google, that you don't take basic precautions. It's killing people now in AI because AI gets mistakes still, serious ones. They call them hallucinations. They're basically mistakes.
Now they're about to bring some technology to the subway system in New York as well, right there? Some sort of scanning.
They are going to put in what they call weapons detection scanners. They come from a company called Evolve. They're going to be put on the entrance to many subway stops. The mayor did a whole press conference showing, you can get this picture with a box around something that's the guy carrying a gun. And if they did a good job, it might be fairly good. They're using the shape of what they're detecting to guess whether or not it's a gun with AI. And that's going to be, might even be 80 or 90% right, but it's not going to be 100%.
That sounds a little sketchy to me. And then what's going to be the response? Okay, the system thinks they identify a gun. What's going to happen?
And I don't know any more than you do, but we both can guess. And we know what's happened on some of these. And the more accurate it is, the more confident the police are going to get. We saw that happening with Face IDs, where people were getting arrested 1,200 miles away from where the crime happened.
Right.
Because the Face IDs were not perfectly accurate, especially on people of color. So this uses what the company and the mayor says is so little radiation, it's not going to affect you. But I haven't seen any proof on that. And we don't know how well it's going to work. we should do that.
Yeah, so
Now,
we're gonna keep an eye on that one.
another one to keep your eye on. We have a lot of practical stuff this week.
Okay,
You
what
probably shouldn't buy any computer with the top of the line Intel i9 chip in it. They got it so complicated with the wires inside so small that they're having problems. It's been talked about on the web for 2 or 3 months that people were discovering problems with the latest Intel. And Intel has just accepted that there is a problem. They're going to send you some software that'll fix it.
Wow.
I don't know. I would find an alternative right now.
This is the Intel 9 chip is the latest version?
Yeah, the latest, yeah.
Okay, well, be forewarned.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What else?
Now, this is again practical stuff. We all know to be scared around people with guns, right? Even if they're police. And we just had.
I say, especially if they're police and you happen to be a person of color.
And I'm not saying you're wrong, but it's not for me to say. And we just had a case where dramatic police body cam video showed an officer fatally shooting a woman in her home who had called in to say she thought she was being burglarized.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it was a Black woman, no surprise, and she apparently was a paranoid schizophrenic, but she wasn't pulling a gun on the officer. This kind of thing happens. Now, that's why I think I can bring it into technology show. It shows the value of having body cam footage.
Yeah.
That perhaps cuts down on the abuses that we know are much too common.
Yeah, let's see what happens with the trial, but certainly having that visual evidence is got to help. Yeah.
And here in New York, did you see what Adams just did?
No, what did he do?
He fired the head of the Civilian Complaint Review Board, or persuaded her to resign.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying all cops are abusive. I know many of them aren't. But it's necessary to protect against the ones who are. Now, how much time do we have?
We've got about 5 minutes, Dave.
Okay, I'll give you one quick.
I'll make that 3 minutes. We've got about 3 minutes, Dave.
3 minutes. Two stories that I'm not going to get to.
Okay.
Self-fitting hearing aids that you can buy for $300 over the counter and probably less.
What kind of self-hearing? What'd you call it, Dave?
Self-fit hearing aids.
Oh, self-fit. Wait.
That you can buy over the counter. You don't have to go to an audiologist.
Going to a specialist. Okay.
You can buy it for $200 or $300 instead of $2,000 or $3,000.
And the technology adjusts to your hearing automatically. Is that it, or your deficit?
No, you can adjust it. They almost all come with a software to use on your phone to adjust it.
Mm-hmm.
And the latest is they looked at people using them after a year, and it didn't make any difference whether they spent $3,000 for an audiologist or just did it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Related to which is something to know. The Wall Street Journal had a headline about a stock market rotation of historic proportions is taking place, and few investors saw that coming, and many are puzzled by what is behind it. The author of the Wall Street Journal obviously didn't know what was behind it. I do. The value of the top 6 or 7 tech companies is off the wall. 6 companies, $15 trillion. Prices, when you look at compared to earnings that are very high, guaranteed that at some point they went up and they will come down. Mm-hmm. And that's a perfectly fine explanation to go. But there's 2 other stories to wrap with, which I really like. Don't eat shark meat. especially that which is coming from the shallow water off Brazil. Did you see this?
I did see that. Apparently, they're dumping drugs in the water. I guess that's illicit drugs that are being dumped in the water, and the sharks are consuming them.
Yep. It's
Wow.
13 sharks, all tested positive for cocaine in low amounts. And it makes sense because sharks are at the top of this food chain. So they're eating something that ate something that ate something that ate the little fish that might have been contaminated.
Mm.
So tuna was always a problem like that. I don't know whether that tuna are coming into the shallows like these sharks did, where it was more concentrated. And the other thing, maybe they'll be able to bring back the woolly mammoth. People have been talking about that seriously for a few years because now we can make DNA, alter DNA, and there are millions of dollars being spent by people who may be fooling themselves, planning on changing the DNA in a living elephant to get us more mammoths.
Jurassic Park, here we come, huh? Now, what happened here, Dave? They found some frozen mammoth that somehow got served up because of global warming. How did that happen?
Yeah, as the glaciers and the Siberian tundra repeat, they're finding a whole lot of people and animals suddenly on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And on a woolly mammoth, they were able to recover 3D chromosomes that showed up preserved in thawed mammoths.
Wow.
Now, I'm not telling you Jurassic Park is here, but I thought, I don't think I want raptors, and I think it would be dangerous
I don't want
to
the
have
mammoths either, but
Tyrannosaurus Rex going around.
now, quick story before you go, Dave. We're just about out of time, but you mentioned a story about the robo taxis in Wuhan, China, and just how successful they are in terms of a low accident rate. Can you just quickly review that for our listening audience? Because I know this is something we've talked about less, especially all the press that Tesla has gotten with its accidents.
Yeah. Wuhan is a small city of 13 million people in Western China. We know about it because they had some biology labs and some problem happened there. And they happen to be leading the world in robo-taxis.
Mm-hmm.
They've got 1,000 on the street from Baidu, which is going into other Chinese cities as well. And the news on that is that they've had very little trouble.
Mm.
There was one case when a jaywalker was hit by a car that couldn't slow all the way down, but slowed down enough that they took the lady to the hospital and the hospital sent her right home because she wasn't injured.
Mm.
So it looks like the better robo-taxis are becoming as safe as human drivers.
Wow.
It's not. The record at Tesla and at GM was not that good, but they're all working on it. So the people doing robo-taxis and auto driving have been saying, we have to have it. It's going to be safer. It's going to save 40,000 lives who get killed in accidents every year. It's not that good. It's certainly not that good yet, but it is quite possible that there will be fewer people hurt in accidents in a few years as self-driving gets better and better. Okay. Well, what that means, you decide for yourself.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. Okay, well, we're about out of time, so thank you, Dave. This has been Community and Technology on WHCR 90.3 FM and on the web at WHCR.org every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Tune in. You just might learn something. Thanks. Good night.